Welcome to Creative Conversations. I'm delighted today to be joined by an amazing Irish artist called John Adams, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. John, welcome.
Hi, Ian. Thank you so much for having me on.
When did you first realise that you had a talent for your art? Because your art, would you class yourself as a fine artist?
Yeah, but fine art refers to kind of a multitude of art forms. It generally tends to refer to the visual arts, but it would encompass all the different types of visual art, mostly painting and sculpture, but I presume it includes conceptual art and installations and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's a very broad statement, fine art. I mean, let's face it, it's hard enough to kind of really explain to people what art itself means, because art is so many things to so many people.
Yeah.
And in my mind, being an artist is all about expressing what you've got inside you and trying to get it out.
Yeah.
So I think some people find it easier than others.
How old were you when you first realised you had a talent for art?
I was quite young, actually. I was in school, and the teacher gave us some homework to do. The art teacher gave us some homework to do, and I went home, did a painting of a pair of boots.
A pair of boots.
And when I brought it back, I didn't use a brush. I think she had told us to use, anything but brushes to do it, trying to give us a challenge to use our imagination.
Right.
And how to come up with an image without using the conventional methods. So I think I used the other end of the brush, the stick end, and
Yeah.
I created a painting of two boots. And the teacher was kind of blown away by it. And after that, she started giving me more attention in school. And she eventually told me that I was the only one in the whole school that had the talent to actually apply to art college.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even realize that there was such a thing as art colleges in those days.
Yeah.
I was amazed to find out that they actually had colleges to teach art, because I, like most Irish people, didn't think art was a serious subject. I thought it was just kind of like a hobby for people.
Yeah.
And so when I learned that there was art colleges, it never occurred to me to apply to go to one, because I'd already made up my mind I was going to study business and follow in my dad's footsteps.
Right.
But she convinced me to apply to the art college anyway, and she helped me get a portfolio together over a couple of year period. And she presented all the pictures very well. She mounted them and everything. And,
oh, wow. So she was quite an important mentor by the sounds of it.
Yeah, Mrs. McCormack in Presentation College, Bray.
Wow.
And without her, I probably wouldn't be an artist now, I guess.
Wow. So where do you think that your talent sort of emerged from? Was anyone else in your family artistic, or was it just something?
Well, my grandmother used to paint and my father used to paint, but only as a hobby.
Yeah.
So there obviously was some kind of talent in there, but I never felt encouraged by anybody except that art teacher. When I eventually went to art college, I was appalled by how critical they were and how destructive their whole teaching methods and systems are. I mean,
yeah,
they don't seem to have any joined up philosophy.
Yeah.
And I was horrified to know that they didn't teach painting in art colleges in Ireland. It wasn't even a subject to be learned. When they were teaching me, the teachers, I couldn't even understand what they were telling me to do, because it was so vague and so alien to what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn to be a visual artist, to create visual images. They were pointing me in all these different directions that seemed so uncreative and so destructive to what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And there was constant criticism all the time, like I couldn't do anything right. So
Oh, wow.
I failed miserably in 4 different art colleges in Ireland,
Really?
constantly getting into arguments with tutors. And, I just couldn't see any sense in what they were trying to teach. And by the end of it all, after 4 years in art college, in 4 different art colleges, I was so disillusioned with the whole thing that I swore I would never try to do art again for the rest of my life. I just was so angry and upset.
Wow.
I had been criticized so much by so many tutors that I really felt useless. And that was 1985. I decided to go to London and pursue a career in music instead, because I'm a drummer. So I moved to London and I formed a band called the Crawdaddies.
Right.
And I didn't pick up a paintbrush or do any art for at least 10 years after that.
Is that right? Wow. Gosh.
And I felt like I would never do it again. I really was so pissed off with the whole thing.
Yeah, right.
So the Crawdaddies, I was in that band for 6 years. And eventually I started getting work in the theatre, painting sets, which was something I'd always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm painting large sets in theatre for many years. I did that for 6 years in London. And also I started getting connected to artists in Brixton where I was living. And we set up an art gallery in a squatted suntan lotion factory. And it was amazing. It was just like so bohemian and crazy parties and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had a gallery and we had a theatre, we had a cinema, we had a cafe with live music all night, every night. And
wow.
It became the epicenter of the arts world in Brixton, in South London, where I was living.
Ah, Brixton, right.
So eventually we got evicted from that, and I found another building for all the artists. I squatted the Dole office in Brixton, which was empty for many years. I got the building and we renovated it over a 6-week period. We spent £10,000 fixing the roof and putting it. We put all new plumbing in, all new electrics and lighting, and make it into a nice art gallery.
Wow.
And we had a theatre and cinema there as well. It operated for 6 years after that, from 1990 to 1996.
Wow,
which
excellent.
was when I moved back to Cork then to pursue my own career, because I still hadn't done any art since between 1985 when I left Ireland.
Yeah.
That was 1996 when I came back to Ireland. I didn't do any art in all that time, even though I was facilitating other people all the time. But that's always been on my agenda, and it still is. Like I'm a good arts organizer, and I organize arts events still to this day in my house in Cove. And when I moved back to Cork in '96, I set up a thing called the Art Trail, organized all the artists in Cork to open their studios to the public for a week every year.
Yeah.
And it became a very important part of the artistic calendar in Cork City.
Yeah, right.
It lasted from 1996 until 2014.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. You really have facilitated a lot of support for other artists as well as yourself.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So if that was a period of time where you didn't do much actual art for yourself, you must have hit a rich vein soon after that, I take it, because you've produced so much work over the years, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it's all since 1996, and basically I just felt in 1996 that I was starting all over again, that I was just learning to be an artist. When I started painting in 1996, I decided to go back to the very basics, and start learning about color.
Right.
I felt like I was learning how to paint then. I felt like I was right at the beginning, because I felt that in art college, I hadn't learned anything that I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So I really felt a complete novice, a complete beginner.
Yeah.
I decided to learn about colors, so I made 30 canvases.
Wow.
And I decided just to play with color on the canvases, to not try to create anything realistic.
Yeah.
Just, kind of trying to create abstract paintings, because I'd never done an abstract painting, and I thought it might be the best way to learn about form and color and composition in an easy way that can be fun as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also just learning about colors and how to mix colors and how they react with each other. Purely experimental. But anyway, the 30 canvases that I had stretched, they all turned out pretty beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it
Cool.
turned out really beautiful, actually. Like, when I finished them, I was blown away, and everyone who saw them was kind of going, wow, they are really beautiful. I had my first ever exhibition then in 1996, and the reaction to it was incredible. Like, people were buying them and
Wow.
talking about them and accepting me into the art world in Cork, artist, you know. And
Yeah.
little did they know, I had just been experimenting, and I didn't feel very confident
That's remarkable.
in art, really. I thought I was just experimenting and learning, but turns out those experiments were very beautiful and well received.
Yeah, that's awesome. That must have given you a lot more confidence to then push on with it, I take it.
I was starting to learn all over again, so I felt I would paint the way I should do as a beginner, as a learner. So once I'd done the abstract paintings and exercised in color, I felt it was time to introduce some realism and some form.
Yeah.
So I started painting a series that ended up being called Slave to the Rhythm.
Okay.
And it was creating figures that weren't necessarily human, but they weren't animal either. So I call them manimals. They're half man, half animal. But
Yeah.
they're kind of abstract beings. They're not very realistic, but the kind of realistic, half and half. But the whole point of doing them was to create images of creatures or beings that are moving within on a canvas to create depth, light, and form. That Slave to the Rhythm, I had the exhibition in 2003, and that was another good selling exhibition. It kept evolving then, my style. 2 years later, I had an exhibition called Remain in Light, which was my forest paintings. And this is when I started really expressing what was in my mind.
Yeah.
And I was very depressed that particular time. I suffered the worst depression in my life for a good few years. And all those paintings were very dark paintings in a forest with the light far off.
Yeah.
So they were more psychological paintings. They weren't really realistic. They were kind of semi-realist, but they were more about a feeling, really.
Yeah.
And they were truly me expressing my inner thoughts, which was very dark. But as I continued painting those, they became brighter and I started getting closer to the light. And the very final painting was a painting of Bray in the sunshine, which is where I come from, where I grew up. So it's kind of a happy place for me in a way.
Nice. Wow, what a journey. That sounds like it was a therapeutic process.
Yeah, it was really. But I mean, I guess that's what art should be, shouldn't it? It should be kind of a way of expressing yourself. You see, in Ireland, they tend to, it probably happens all over the world, but the galleries tend to want the artist to create some art that looks the same all the time, so that people can recognize the artist's work straight away when they go in the gallery.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's very popular when an artist is like me, who does something different every time they do a new body of work. It's so different to the last body of work that it looks like it's done by a different artist. After I did the trees, I decided it was time to start honing my skills as a painter.
Yeah.
So I decided to start painting realistic paintings. And at the time, we were living in a Celtic Tiger, which is the boom period in Ireland, where there was lots of money around. People were buying art and buying property for fun. And it was a crazy period in Ireland where the Irish became very greedy, and I think it was very damaging for the state as psychologically speaking. Yeah. Greed became popular in Ireland, and I think it became popular all over the world under Reagan and Thatcherism. And it's really appalling to me, really,
Yeah.
Because I like to look at the bigger picture. I like to look at what's good for the planet, and capitalism, in my mind, is very bad for the planet. I don't think we can survive under capitalism. It's all about greed and making more and more money for shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take the environment into concern at all, or poor people either. The whole reason I'm explaining this was because during the Celtic Tiger period, and it's still happening to this day, but the beautiful city that I was living in, Cork City, was being destroyed by property developers.
Right.
And they're ripping down so many of the beautiful old sandstone buildings in the city. Mm. And this really hurt me to my soul, because I love architecture.
Yes.
So I started Cork because they're building a lot of pharmaceutical factories in Cork Harbour.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of sailing with my friends Don and Louise, who are here in Spain with me. And so I know Cork Harbour very well. It's the second most largest natural harbour in the world. It's only second to Sydney Harbour, your harbour.
Yeah, yeah.
And I started depicting Cork Harbour in my paintings. I ended up doing 57 paintings of the harbour from every different angle possible.
Wow.
Wow. I had an exhibition in 2008, which was amazing as well. I sold loads of paintings, and they went to very important collections, like the city council bought some, and the city library, and also the Royal College of Surgeons.
That must be very satisfying to know that your paintings are hanging in such places.
Yeah, and previously to that, in 1990, paintings to the Municipal Art Gallery, the Crawford Art Gallery as well, which was probably, to this day, it's still my most important painting sale. But also the President of Ireland has two of my paintings. I gave him one in 1997 when he visited my studio.
Wow.
And he was the Minister of Arts when he visited my studio, and he showed such an interest in my work that I gave him a painting then.
Wow.
And recently, there's a film company making a film about my life, and I contacted the president's office, and I asked them if he still had the painting, would he allow me to film the painting wherever he had it hanging?
Yeah.
And they told me that the president had brought my painting to the president's palace in Dublin when he got elected as president. That it was one of the only things, it was one of the few things he brought from his home to the palace with him. And it's been there for the last 10 years with him.
Wow. That's awesome.
He's in his second term as president. So he invited me up to the palace to film him talking about the painting.
Wonderful.
With me. And so I gave him another painting, and to this day, it was still the most honorable thing I've had as an artist. In the first recognition from anybody in the establishment, I suppose. because unfortunately the galleries and the curators have never recognized my work. They've never given me any recognition whatsoever. The curators seem to be obsessed with this conceptual art and installations. But also it's become more important to write about your work than the work itself. Like in art colleges in Ireland now, it's really more important to be able to write about the work than the work itself, which is appalling. It's so anti-art in my mind.
What do you feel is the role of the artist in today's society then?
Well, I think the artists are suppressed. We don't have a role in society. We don't get a chance to even show our work in Irish society. You know, the real artists, the good artists, we're not even recognized by the establishment. So, you know, we get to show, like my latest exhibition is in a pub. You know, these are the kind of places I have to resort to showing it. You know, it's been real success. I've sold a good few and I've got a couple of really fantastic write-ups in the paper.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not in a recognized art gallery where I should be showing. I've never had, I've been a full-time artist since 1996. I think I've once had an exhibition in a recognized art gallery.
The interesting thing is that it seems to me that wherever you have had a showing, it has always been very well received, hasn't it?
Yeah, people like my work. My work is popular with people.
Yeah.
You know, I do work that appeals to people. I'm lucky because I don't do it on purpose. I do work that I like.
Yeah.
But to me, beauty is important. You know, beauty is important in art.
Yes.
Like when I'm creating a piece, I want it to look beauty because it will only please me if I think it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Luckily, a lot of this conceptual art and installation art has no concept of beauty. You know, it's not even on their agenda.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you find that painters, sculptors, and other forms of arts like ceramicists and printmakers and photographers, they're all concerned with beauty and aesthetics. They want their work to look beautiful.
Do you remember this?
Yeah.
How do I? So that's is
underwater, isn't it?
Was this a style that you did in a series as well around that time?
Yeah. That I started painting like that quite early. It happened in Limerick Art School in 1984 when I mistakenly dropped a pot of paint onto a canvas lying on the floor.
Yeah.
And I just started playing with it and adding more colors and stuff. And then I realized I kind of invented a new technique of painting, which is pouring. It's a pouring technique. And you'll see it's very popular now. If you go onto Instagram or Facebook or something and put in acrylic pouring, you'll find it's become huge.
Wow.
There are people doing it all over the world. And I think I was one of the first people to do it. Obviously, it has to be done lying on the floor because the paint is so liquid. It would just pour off the canvas if you lifted it up. So you actually manipulate the canvas on the ground and you move the canvas and you manipulate the paint with brushes or sticks. I usually use sticks to paint those liquid paintings and splash the paint on. But I literally perfected it to such a stage that I was able to paint figures in and include their muscles and things like that. And but also, I realized it's a fantastic way to paint water and the sea. In that famous painting that I did in 1999 of Hog's Head that the Crawford Art Gallery bought, it has an amazing seascape done with that technique. Use that technique with a realistic technique. After the liquid has dried, then you paint over it with the land or whatever you want to put in.
Right.
And it really enhances it and makes it look amazing.
So it sounds to me like you're quite self-taught, really.
Absolutely, 100% self-taught. Although I did go to Florence to study, and I learned a lot in a month painting in Florence, because they actually teach the traditional painting techniques there in the Florence Academy of Art.
Right.
I only did a month there of landscape painting and figure painting.
Yeah,
But
right.
I learned more in that month than I did in 4 years in art college in Ireland. I don't consider myself a super realist painter. I consider myself an expressionist painter.
Yeah.
In other words, I like to be able to have kind of rough brush strokes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Van Gogh. Think of Van Gogh's style. I love his brush strokes. He's got such a flow, and his brush strokes are what you see when you look at his painting. You see his brush strokes. His brush strokes hit you in the face just as much as the image does.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love Van Gogh. But I mean, from an early age, I guess I liked realistic painters. Like the pre-Raphaelites were my favorite first painters.
Yeah.
And I love painting trees. I've always loved trees.
Yeah.
And the pre-Raphaelites painted trees like I've still never seen anybody paint trees like them. And the colors that they get into their paintings, just astonishing.
Yeah.
You know, I would consider myself to be really rubbish painter if you compare it to some of these painters, the pre-Raphaelites. Like I could never paint as well as them. I don't know how they did it. Like you seem in awe of my painting skills, but I am equally in awe of their painting skills.
Yeah, I guess that's
people like let's see now. Well, Francis Bacon would be my favorite artist. So a lot of my work has been inspired by him. Like those figures I was telling you about, the Slave to the Rhythm series, that was completely inspired by Francis Bacon.
Right. I was going to ask.
My earliest work was inspired by the pre-Raphaelites and also by David Hockney, an English artist as well.
Oh, yes.
I love the color of his swimming pool series when he was living in America.
Yeah.
So he was one of my early favorite painters. But to this day, still, I would say Francis Bacon has a huge influence on my art. And if I was to ever say which artist I would like to be like most, it would be Francis Bacon. Even though, I wouldn't say I paint like him anymore, but
yeah,
I would hope to go back to painting like him someday. And this is the one thing that the galleries don't seem to get. They don't seem to get an artist wanting to change all the time.
Yeah, it seems such a natural thing to.
And I think your art is also your environment that you're painting in makes a huge difference. Like if I've got a studio, but I've only had a studio for the last few months. Before that, I was working at home.
Yeah.
And that really restricts you because you can't make a mess and you can't paint huge, big paintings.
Yeah.
It makes a massive difference, the studio that you have. Like if you've got a good studio, a nice big studio, where you can paint any size, and you can make as much mess as you want, then you feel totally free to do whatever you like. But if you've got a studio where you're restricted in size and by trying to keep the place tidy, then it's really going to restrict, and it will hugely affect the kind of art that you're making. And even Francis Bacon, he had the same thing. He had the same studio all those years. And he could only fit certain size canvases up the stairs into his studio.
Yeah.
So all his paintings were restricted to a certain size.
Right. Interesting. So
have you ever seen his studio?
No, I haven't. No. So where did he work from?
Look it up online after this call. It's amazing. It's in Dublin now. They took it from London because none of the galleries in London bid for it. So the gallery in Dublin bought his studio,
Oh,
and
wow.
they recreated it. They recreated it perfectly within a gallery in Dublin. And
Oh, nice.
there's a glass walkway going into his studio, so you can actually walk in and see it, but you're surrounded by glass so that you can't touch anything.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's in a vacuum because they used archaeologists to recreate his studio.
yeah.
So they actually took all the dust up off the floor and replaced it exactly where it was
Wow.
in
Wow.
in Dublin.
Wow.
So they went to so much trouble to recreate it exactly as it was.
Wow.
And boy, was it a mess. Wait till you see it. It's the messiest studio you could imagine.
I'll look it up for sure. That must have been inspiring for you to see that.
Absolutely, yeah, because everything about that man inspires me,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
his soul, you see, I feel that his soul is completely in his work. It's like you get into a meditative state, you get
Mm,
into a zone where nothing else
mm.
in the world matters.
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of that has to do with the time of the day that you're painting. I tend to love it best when I'm painting late at night,
yeah,
like in the early hours of the morning.
yeah.
Like one time I painted for 5 days and 5 nights without stopping
Really?
in the studio in the freezing cold of winter in Ireland, where there was snow all over the ground outside.
Yeah.
And I had an old studio in an old factory in Cork Docklands. And even the windows, they were smashed, so the wind could howl in.
Oh,
It was absolutely freezing. But you see, you go into such an amazing zone, Nina. It's a creative zone. It's impossible to explain it, because if you've
mm.
never been there, you won't understand it. But it is like, your whole mind is thinking about your work.
What series of paintings did you create in that 5 days?
I was painting realistic paintings of Cork City.
Cool.
This was my Cork series after I'd done Cork Harbour. The
Uh-huh.
natural thing for me to do was to move up the estuary into the city,
Yeah.
because the property developers were destroying so much of Cork.
Mm.
So I was documenting the old buildings before they were demolished.
Yeah.
I felt as an artist it was my duty
Mm,
to
mm.
document what was happening in Cork,
Yeah, yeah,
which is the destruction of our old beautiful old city, in my mind, by the
yeah,
developers and the planners. For me, that was very important. And it
yeah.
was only after I had done that, I had the exhibition in 2010
Right.
of my Cork paintings, and that was also very successful. But then you had the economic crash came, and
Mm, mm.
there was a huge recession in Ireland, and nobody was selling art for the next 10 years, basically. So I did a whole series of animals painted on the corrugated metal found on the beach.
Awesome.
And I thought it was really appropriate to paint the animals that are struggling because of pollution
Yeah.
onto rubbish that's actually found on the beach.
Oh, that's a great idea. And has that been well received or?
It's been incredibly well received, and people are buying them as well. Like,
Oh, wow.
I've sold 3 or 4 of them in the last few months, and they're not
Oh,
cheap, really.
bravo.
So it's been
Awesome.
really fantastic. I didn't think they'd sell. I thought, so
Yeah.
it's another it's another reason why I think, like, to be an artist, you don't do paintings because you think they'll sell. If
No,
you do
no.
that kind of art, I think if you do that kind of art, you're not a real artist. You're
Yeah.
just creating pretty pictures to
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
So I did these paintings on the metal. I never expected that they'd sell,
Yeah.
because I thought, who's going to buy a painting on the metal, like on rusted metal?
Mm, mm.
So, I was really pleasantly surprised that people did want to buy them. But it's just one example how I explained to you the difference between a commercial artist
Yeah.
and an artist who's creating art for their passion and for the reason of expressing what it is that they're trying to get out.
Mm, mm.
So,
Yeah.
I wasn't considering selling them. I didn't think they'd sell. So I didn't do them for that reason.
Mm, mm.
And
Isn't that awesome when you approach it like that, and then people turn around and appreciate it so much that they buy it. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's
Absolutely, yes.
what compels you to keep painting? Because I what I've learned today from you is that you've created many different styles. You're still evolving to this day with the work that you do. What is the driving force for you generally?
I guess a lot of it has to do with the excitement of the unknown
Yes,
and what's going to come out next.
yes,
Because I like the idea that I'm going to create something that I've never created before, and it's not going to be like anything I've created before.
yeah,
But also, it's going to be inspired by feelings that I have in the future. Like, I'm not going to be painting the animals forever.
No,
Maybe I painted the last animal. I don't even know yet what the next series is going to be.
yeah, exactly.
And for me, that's the most exciting thing, is the fact that whatever it is that I create next is going to be new. It's going to be something that I want to create. Maybe we should make art together someday. We just go into a studio and you play music and I'll paint along to it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, I used to have a friend called Gerald Davis, and he used to do that at the Cork Jazz Festival. He used to get up on stage and paint with the jazz bands.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah, we should do
and
that.
And I have done that. I have done that in the past.
Well, I'll have
it's
to get
kind of fun.
I'll have to get myself to Ireland then. What's your favorite piece of art that you've ever created?
It's called Leaning to the Left 1, 2, and 3, and it's a triptych in the Slave to the Rhythm series.
Yeah.
And it's actually in the article in the paper yesterday. Did you see that? I had a lovely article in the Irish Examiner newspaper yesterday.
I did see that. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So that's your.
But I've done others as well. Like I've done, yeah, I guess that Hog's Head painting that's in the Crawford Gallery is pretty amazing as well. Like when I saw it again recently, when we were filming for this documentary the lads are making, we went in to film that painting, and I was blown away by it because I hadn't seen it since I painted it. I painted it in 1997, I think.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen it since then because they had bought it and it's been in storage ever since.
Yeah, nice.
So it was an incredible feeling to be reunited with a painting that you did so long ago, and to actually think, wow, it's even much better than I remembered it,
wow.
you know. So that was a really amazing surprise, you know.
It must be like being reunited with an old friend.
It was. I was just astonished. I really was. I loved it so much. I didn't want to leave it, actually.
That's awesome. What are you most proud of for all the work you've done over the years?
Good question. Well, I guess my house is probably one of the main things. Like, you know, I bought a house in 2014.
Yeah.
It took me 3 years work to renovate the house.
Yeah.
And the main goal of the house, apart from making a living environment for myself that I love, was to create the gallery downstairs, you know, knock down all the walls downstairs, put in a split level concrete floor so there's a natural stage in the room, and it also affects the acoustics of the room. So it's a really good room for putting on concerts, and also, you know, I've hosted plays and poetry, storytelling, all that kind of thing in that room. You can have 40 people sitting down in that room. I guess I'm very proud of that house because it's a great place to show off my art as well.
Yes.
It's my own personal art gallery.
Yes.
And I've really established myself within the community of Cove, which is a wonderful place to live. The people are very inviting and welcoming. And, you know, to feel welcome and part of that community and to have contributed, I think, you know, that makes me quite proud, you know.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have a wonderful family and we're very much important to each other, and you know, personal relationships, friendships, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm proud of, I suppose, you know.
The film that you mentioned is being made about you. when might we expect that to be ready?
I would guess in about 6 months' time, because we've got a lot of editing to do, and we need some music for it as well. So hopefully we're going to have some Ian Cameron Smith music on my documentary.
Yeah, I'd be honoured, John. I'd be absolutely honoured. Thanks so much again for spending time with us today. Big thank you to the viewers for tuning in, having a look at the video, and yeah, look forward to chatting again sometime soon, mate.
And thank you so much for having me on, Ian.
Hopefully we'll get over to see you before too long, John.
I can't wait.
Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.